Quick question before we start. Have you ever woken up and you could see your room, you could hear the world, you could even feel your own heartbeat, but you could not move? Not a finger, not your mouth, not even to scream? And then, because your brain is a little drama queen in 4K, you swear something is in the room with you, watching, breathing, getting close. Sometimes it feels like a weight sits on your chest. Sometimes you hear footsteps. Sometimes you hear a voice say your name like it is right next to your ear. And the worst part is, the whole time you are thinking, this is it. This is how I die. If you have ever had that, you already know what we are talking about today. Sleep paralysis. And I want to connect it to Vecna from Stranger Things, because the reason Vecna hit so hard is not just the gore or the visuals, it is the vibe. The something is in your head, in your space, in your body, and you cannot fight it vibe. That is sleep paralysis energy. So today we are doing a deep dive into how sleep paralysis actually works, why people across the world describe eerily similar entities, and why our brains keeps creating the same nightmare character over and over, even when we have never met each other. And yes, we are going to sprinkle in a little paranormal flavor, but I'm going to be really clear about what is documented science and what is a human interpretation, folklore, and personal beliefs. Because sleep paralysis is one of those topics where facts and fear hold hands. Okay, lights low, phone on silent, let's do this. First, what sleep paralysis is in plain human language. Sleep paralysis is when your brain wakes up, but your body is stuck in sleep mode. When we sleep, especially during REM sleep, the stage where the most vivid dreaming happens, your brain basically puts your muscles in a temporary lock. It is called REM atonia. The point of it is actually protective. When you dream that you are running from Vecna or fighting a monster or doing parkour across rooftops, your body is not supposed to act it out. Your brain is like, no babe, you are staying in bed. Sleep paralysis is what can happen when that REM lock does not switch off in sync with waking up. So you wake up. Your awareness is online, but your muscles are still under that REM paralysis. And that is terrifying by itself. But then the hallucinations kick in. And that is where it becomes a full horror movie. Because your brain is in this weird in-between state where elements of dreaming can bleed into waking reality. You are awake enough to recognize your room, but the dream imagery can still overlay it. Like your mind is projecting a nightmare onto your actual bedroom like an AR filter from hell. That is why sleep paralysis can feel so real. You are not imagining some abstract dream world. You are seeing your real walls, your real doorway, your real closet, and then your brain adds something. Now let's talk about the 3 most common types of sleep paralysis hallucinations, because this is the part where people start going, wait, why do we all see the same thing? Researchers often group them into 3 common themes. There is usually an intruder experience. That is when you feel a presence in a room. You might see a shadow figure, you might hear breathing, you might hear footsteps, you might feel like something is standing in the corner watching you. It is the classic someone is here fear. Then there is the incubus experience. That is the chest pressure one. People describe it like a weight sitting on them, or like something is pressing down on their ribs like they cannot breathe properly. They sometimes interpret it as being attacked or strangled or held down. This is also where a lot of old stories about something sitting on your chest come from, because from the inside of that experience it can feel exactly like that. And then there is a third category that people do not talk about as much, but it happens. The strange body sensations category. Floating, vibrating, being pulled out of bed, being dragged, hearing buzzing, feeling like you are separating from your body. People interpret that as astral projection, alien abduction, spiritual attack, you name it. But neurologically, it fits with dreamlike body sensations blending with waking perception. So those are the main themes: presence, pressure, and weird body sensations. Now let's connect this to Vecna, because Vecna is basically a character built out of the deepest human fear recipe. Vecna does not just jump out from behind a door like boo. He invades. He enters your mind. He locks your body. He forces you to watch. He makes it feel personal, like he knows your secrets, your guilt, your trauma. He uses your own memories against you. And sleep paralysis does something similar, even though it is not a monster doing it. It is your brain. A lot of people who have sleep paralysis describe it as not just scary, but violating, because you are trapped. You cannot run, you cannot fight, you cannot even call out to someone in the next room. And that helplessness is exactly what makes it feel like an intelligent predator is involved. Now, here's the part that is genuinely wild. People across different countries, different centuries, different religions, and different cultures describe extremely similar sleep paralysis entities, even when they have never heard each other's stories. In Newfoundland, there is the Old Hag, this legend of an old witch-like woman who sits on your chest and steals your breath. In Japan, there is kanashibari, a word that basically describes being bound, and people historically tied it to spirits or supernatural restraint. Across parts of Northern Europe, there are old stories of a mare or night spirit that rides sleepers and brings terror. That is also where the word nightmare comes from historically, from an old word meaning a frightening spirit, not just a bad dream. In Brazil, there is a figure called pisadeira, often described as an old woman who tramples on people's chests at night. In parts of the Middle East and North Africa, including Egypt, some people interpret sleep paralysis as a jinn attack, because the experience fits their spiritual framework. You cannot move. You feel a presence. You feel pressure. You may see something. So when people ask, why do we all see the same thing? There are two ways to answer. The psychological answer is that human brains are wired similarly, and the sleep paralysis state produces predictable fear patterns. When your body is frozen and your breathing feels weird, your brain's threat system is like, okay, we are under attack. It scans for a reason, and in that half-dream state, it generates one. A presence, an intruder, a predator. Your brain is basically trying to explain the unexplained with the strongest emotional language it has, which is fear. And the paranormal answer, the one people fear in their bones, is, what if it is not just the brain? Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you, yes, demons are confirmed real, because that is not a factual claim we can prove. But I will say something important. Even if the cause is neurological, the experience is real. Real fear, real sensation, real memory, real trauma sometimes. People can come out of sleep paralysis shaking, crying, afraid to go back to sleep. That matters. And because it matters, it is worth understanding what can trigger it. Because triggers are one of the most solid documented parts of this whole topic. Sleep paralysis is more likely to happen when you are sleep deprived, stressed, or sleeping irregularly. All-nighters, jet lag, shift work, exams, a new baby, grief, anxiety spirals, anything that messes with your sleep schedule. It is also more common in people who sleep on their back. Not always, but a lot of people notice it happens more in that position. It is linked with narcolepsy in a big way. Not everyone with sleep paralysis has narcolepsy, not even close. But sleep paralysis can be part of the narcolepsy symptom cluster. It can also show up more in people who have PTSD or high anxiety, likely because stress affects sleep architecture and REM transitions. And there is another practical thing. If you have untreated sleep apnea or breathing disruptions during sleep, that can increase fragmented awakenings and can overlap with these scary moments. The chest pressure feeling can also be amplified when breathing is disrupted. So basically, if your sleep is chaotic, your brain is more likely to glitch during the REM on-off switch. Now let's talk about the chest pressure part, because this is where people go, okay, no, something sat on me. During REM sleep, your breathing can become more shallow and irregular compared to deep sleep. Your diaphragm still works, but many other muscles are more offline because your skeletal muscles are suppressed. So if you partially wake up during REM atonia, you might feel like you cannot breathe normally. In most cases, you are still breathing, but the sensation feels wrong. The muscles are inhibited and your fear response makes you hyper-focus on it. Fear also makes breathing feel hard. Anxiety can make you feel like you cannot get a full breath, even when you can. So your brain combines, I cannot move, plus my breathing feels off, and goes, there is a weight on my chest. And then it paints a character to match that feeling. That is the incubus effect. Now, we need to talk about why the intruder is so common, like why shadow figures, why dark silhouettes, why not a random clown or a giraffe. This comes down to the fact that in a low-light bedroom, your brain is already guessing. Human vision is not a perfect camera. It is a prediction machine. In the dark, your brain fills in missing information and it tends to prioritize threat detection over accuracy. And when you are in a half-dream state with your threat system turned up, your brain will interpret ambiguous shapes as something meaningful. A coat on a chair becomes a person, curtain becomes a figure, a door crack becomes an eye. And if you have ever watched Stranger Things at 2 a.m., your brain has extra material to work with. I'm just saying. This is also why so many people describe similar features. A figure in the corner, a shadow by the bed, a presence behind them. The room layout and human fear patterns create a template. Now, let's talk about Vecna energy specifically. Because Vecna is not just a shadow. Vecna is intimate. He gets inside your head. And sleep paralysis can absolutely feel like that. Some people hear voices during sleep paralysis, whispers, their name, a growl, a buzzing sound. Some people feel hands touching them. Some people feel like something is climbing onto the bed. And again, in a REM bleed state, those can be hallucinations with sensory detail. Your brain can generate sound and even tactile sensations. That is not you being dramatic, that is literally how the brain can work in this state. And this is where I want to gently bring in the dark side of your mind part, because this is not just about monsters, it is about what fear does when it's in control. During sleep paralysis, the emotional tone is often intense dread. You are basically awake inside a fear dream overlap. That is why it can feel so evil and personal. And when the mind is in dread, it looks for meaning. It asks, why is this happening to me? And that is where personal interpretation comes in. Some people say it is demons. Some people say it is aliens. Some people say it is a spirit attachment. Some people say it is trauma manifesting. Some people say it is a glitch. Some people say it is a God warning them. Some people say it is a curse. And here is what we can factually say without disrespecting anyone's beliefs. The experience itself is consistent with a known sleep phenomenon where REM paralysis and dream imagery can overlap with waking awareness. That is the scientific model, and it explains a lot of the pattern. The interpretation of what the entity is depends on your culture, your beliefs, and what your brain has been fed. If you grew up hearing about the old hag, your intruder might be an old woman. If you grew up with jinn stories, it may be a jinn. If you grew up on internet shadow man lore, it may be the headman. If you grew up watching Stranger Things, your brain might give you Vecna vibes. But the base sensation is similar because the brain mechanism is similar. Now I want to talk about the headman for a second, because I know somebody listening just went, wait, I have seen him. There is a modern urban legend where people describe a tall shadow figure with a head during sleep paralysis. It is not universal, but it is common enough that it has become its own creepy internet thing. From a factual standpoint, we cannot prove a single entity exists across experiences, but we can say that the human brain is very good at generating archetypes, especially when fear and darkness are involved. A tall human silhouette is a basic thread shape. Add a head and your brain has a sharp outline to lock onto. It becomes memorable, it becomes shareable, and then more people hear about it and it becomes part of the cultural template. So, is the headman real? Factually, we cannot confirm that. Are people really experiencing it? Yes. The cause is what people debate. And Stranger Things plays with that exact human vulnerability. This show understands that the scariest monsters are the ones that feel like they are inside you, not just outside your window. Okay, so what do you do if sleep paralysis happens to you? Because knowing the science does not automatically make it less scary in the moment. First, if it happens, the most helpful thing is remembering one simple sentence. This is temporary. Most episodes last seconds to a couple of minutes. It can feel longer because fear stretches time, but it usually ends. People also find it easier to focus on moving something small. Wiggle a toe, move your tongue, try to blink slowly. Small movements can help pull you fully out of the paralysis. Some people focus on breathing calmly because panic makes it worse. I know that is easy to say, hard to do, but if you can anchor on slow breath, it can reduce the I'm dying feeling. Long-term, reducing triggers helps. Regular sleep schedule, enough sleep, stress reduction. Avoid sleeping on your back if that seems to trigger it for you. Treat sleep issues like sleep apnea if you suspect them. If you have frequent episodes or do you have major daytime sleepiness, that is when you should talk to a doctor because sleep disorders are real and treatable. And if you ever experience sudden muscle weakness triggered by strong emotion, that can be a narcolepsy-related symptom called cataplexy, and it is worth getting checked. Not a diagnosis, just a reason to get help. And I want to say this clearly. Sleep paralysis is common enough that many people experience it at least once in their lives. Having one episode does not mean you are broken or cursed, but if it is recurring and distressing, it is worth getting support. Now let's bring it back to Vecna because the title says Vecna is real, and I need to be honest with you. Vecna is fictional. There is no real-world evidence of a tentacle lich living in another dimension harvesting trauma for snacks. But what Vecna represents, that part is real. The experience of being trapped in your own body, the experience of something invading your mind, the experience of fear taking your memories and turning them into a weapon. The feeling that you are screaming and no one can hear you, that is real. That is sleep paralysis. That is panic. That is nightmare logic bleeding into reality. And it is also why sleep paralysis stories have survived for centuries. Because before we understood REM atonia, people had to explain it somehow. They did not have sleep labs. They did not have MRI scans. They had the dread in the dark. So they made stories. They named the thing. They gave it a face. They made it a witch, a demon, a jinn, a spirit, a monster. And here's the twist I love. The monster changes. But the script stays the same. Wake up, cannot move, presence, pressure, fear, release. That pattern is the same across time, across countries, across languages. That is why it feels like a shared haunting. It is the human brain running a very specific nightmare program. So if you have had sleep paralysis and you felt like you were losing your mind, I want you to hear me. You are not crazy. Your brain did a known thing. A terrifying thing, yes, but a known thing. And if you have never had it, congratulations, please keep your streak. But also maybe do not binge horror at 3 a.m. and fall asleep on your back, because that is basically inviting your brain to try it out. Now, I want to end with a question because I know the comments on this topic get intense. Do you think sleep paralysis is purely neurological, a brain glitch during REM, or do you think there is something more going on, something paranormal, something spiritual, something we don't fully understand yet? And if you have experienced it, what did you see? Was it a shadow figure? Was it a voice? Was it pressure on your chest? Was it something that felt like Vecna crawling into your head? Tell me your story, but also be nice to each other in the comments, because this is one of these topics where people are genuinely scared and genuinely affected. And if you want more Stranger Things but make it real deep dives, hit like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Stay curious, sleep well, and if you wake up and feel a presence in the corner, try wiggling your toe first.